In all my years at this station, I have sold thousands of tickets. Tens of thousands, perhaps. After a while, you stop counting. You stop noticing, really. A ticket is a ticket, a transaction. 30 seconds at the window, money changes hands, a small piece of card changes hands. The person moves on. You move on. That is how it works. That is how it has always worked. Until Eleanor. Eleanor made me notice again. Eleanor made me count. She came on a Monday, the first Monday of March. I remember because March in this station has a particular quality of light. The sun coming back, but not yet warm, everything pale gold and slightly uncertain, like the day itself hasn't quite decided what it wants to be. She came through the main entrance at 9:15 in the morning. The station was quiet at that hour. The commuter rush finished. The late morning travelers not yet arrived. That particular stillness that only exists between things. She was perhaps 70, perhaps a little more. It is difficult to say with some people. The kind of woman who had always looked this age and would always look this age. Quietly elegant. That is the phrase that arrived in my mind when I saw her, and it has stayed. Not dressed expensively, not dressed to be noticed, simply dressed with care. A dark coat, good shoes, her hair white and neatly arranged. She carried a small handbag over one arm. She walked to my window. She asked for one ticket. Single. To a town called Whitmore, a coastal town, about 2 hours east on the local line. I printed it. She paid. She took the ticket. She folded it once, carefully, placed it in the outer pocket of her coat, and walked back toward the main entrance. I watched her go, not because there was anything unusual about her, simply because the station was quiet and there was nothing else to watch. She reached the main entrance, stopped, stood there for a moment, then turned around, walked back through the station, past the coffee stand, past the departure boards, out through the side entrance. She did not go to the platform. She did not board the train. She left. I thought nothing of it. People change their minds. People buy tickets and then remember something, get a phone call, lose their nerve about a journey. It happens. I thought nothing of it at all. Until the following Monday, when she came back, 9:15 in the morning. The same pale gold March light, the same dark coat, the same good shoes. She walked to my window, asked for one ticket. Single, to Whitmore. I printed it. She paid. She took it, folded it once, placed it in her coat pocket, walked to the main entrance, stopped, and left, the same as before. This time I watched more carefully. She did not look distressed. She did not look confused. She did not look like a woman who had forgotten something or received a phone call or changed her mind in the ordinary way. She looked like a woman who had done exactly what she came to do, which was buy the ticket, and then leave. On the third Monday, I was ready for her. 9:15. She came through the main entrance. I was already watching. Same coat, same shoes, same walk to the window, same request. One ticket, single, Whitmore. This time, when I printed it, I looked at her face. She was looking at the ticket as it came through the printer. Her expression was, I have tried many times to find the right word for it. Not sad, not hopeful, not anxious. Resolved. That is the closest I can get. The expression of someone who has decided to do something and is doing it, whatever that something was. She took the ticket, folded it, pocket, main entrance, stop, leave. I watched her go through the main entrance and turn right toward the car park. I stood at my window for a long time after. A queue formed behind the next customer. I had to look away. But I kept thinking about her. That word, resolved. And how resolved and leaving without boarding a train were two things that did not sit easily together. The fourth Monday she came, I said good morning. She seemed slightly surprised, not unpleasantly. She said good morning back. Her voice was quiet and clear. The voice of someone who had been a careful speaker their whole life. She bought the ticket. I noticed her hands as she counted out the money. Steady. No tremor. Not nervous. Simply steady. She folded the ticket. Pocket. Main entrance. Stop. Leave. The fifth Monday, it rained. She came at 9:15 regardless. A small umbrella. The same coat. I had begun by now to look forward to Mondays in a way I could not entirely explain. She bought the ticket. I said, "Dreadful weather." She said, "Yes." Then, "It won't last." Then she left. She was right. By noon, the rain had stopped. I thought about that. How certain she had seemed. It won't last. And then I thought about what else she might be that certain about. The sixth Monday, I asked her name. I don't usually ask. It isn't part of the transaction. But by the sixth Monday, it felt strange not to know it. She seemed to consider the question for a moment, as if deciding something. Then she said, "Eleanor." I said, "I'm Thomas, station master here for the last 22 years. She looked at me properly for the first time, not just at the ticket printer, at me. She said, 22 years? That's a long time to be in one place." I said, "Some places are worth staying in." She looked at the station around her, at the vaulted ceiling, at the morning light through the high windows, at the departure boards. She said, "Yes, I suppose they are." Then she folded her ticket. Pocket. Main entrance. Stop. Leave. I wrote her name in my diary that evening. Eleanor. Just the name, nothing else, because I didn't know anything else. Only that she came every Monday at 9:15 and bought a ticket to Whitmore and never boarded the train, and that her voice was quiet and clear, and that she had been certain the rain wouldn't last. By the eighth Monday, I had begun to watch for her from my office window. I could see the main entrance from there if I stood at the right angle. 9:12, 9:13, 9:14. She appeared at 9:15 exactly, every time. The precision of it. I found myself wondering what her mornings were like, whether she had a routine that delivered her to this station at exactly this time, whether she sat somewhere beforehand, had tea, gathered herself, and then came here. I found myself wondering a great many things about Eleanor by the eighth Monday. On the ninth Monday, she arrived and there was a queue at my window, 3 people ahead of her. She waited. She did not check a phone. She did not look at the departure boards. She simply stood in the queue and waited. When she reached the window, I said, "I'm sorry for the wait." She said, "I'm not in a hurry." And something about the way she said it, "I'm not in a hurry," made me think, and then immediately feel guilty for thinking, that this was not entirely true, that there was something she was in a hurry about, something she was running out of time for, and that she had decided not to show it. On the 11th Monday, I asked, and I still don't know quite what made me ask it, I asked if she would like a cup of tea. "My office is just there," I said, pointing, "if you ever wanted to sit for a moment, before your journey." I don't know why I said before your journey. She never took the journey. She looked at me for a moment, then at the office door. Then she said, "That's very kind. Perhaps another time." And she left. But she had not said no. I noticed that. She had said perhaps another time, which is different. The 12th Monday, she said yes. She came to the window, bought her ticket, folded it, pocket, and then instead of walking to the main entrance, she said, "Is that offer of tea still open?" I said, "I'll put the kettle on right now." She sat in the chair across from my desk, the same chair that Margaret had sat in, that Arthur had sat in. There was something about watching people sit in that chair, like it had been made for exactly this, for people carrying things they hadn't yet put down. I made the tea. I didn't ask anything. I had learned by then, you don't ask. You make the tea, you sit, you wait. She looked around the office, at the maps, at the filing cabinets, at the small window that looked out over the station floor. She said, "You can see everything from here." I said, "That's rather the point." She said, "Do you find it lonely? Watching? Always watching?" I thought about that. I said, "Sometimes, but mostly I find it the opposite." She considered that. She said, "The opposite of lonely." I said, full. You feel full. Because everyone who passes through that door is carrying something. Someone they love, someone they've lost, something they're hoping for. You can't be lonely in the middle of all that. She looked at me over her teacup. She said, "That's a very generous way to see it." I said, "It took 22 years." She smiled, a small, careful smile, the kind that is learned to be careful. We drank our tea. She didn't tell me anything that first Monday in the office. She asked me about the station mostly, how long the building had been here, what it had looked like before, whether I had always worked in stations. She was interested in the answers, genuinely interested, the kind of listening that makes you talk more than you intended. I found myself telling her about my first posting, a tiny station in the north, 2 platforms, 4 trains a day. She laughed at that, a real laugh, sudden and brief, like it had surprised her. She said, 4 trains. I said, "It was a very quiet part of the world." She said, "It sounds peaceful." I said, "It was. In the way that things are peaceful when you're 23 and don't yet know what you want." She looked at me. She said, "And now?" I said, "Now I know exactly where I want to be." She nodded, as if that answer meant something particular to her. She finished her tea. She thanked me. She stood. She picked up her handbag, smoothed her coat, and at the door she stopped. Without turning around, she said, "Same time next week," and left. I sat in my office for a long time after, the 2 empty cups on the desk, the station moving below the window. Same time next week. The same words Arthur had used. I wondered if my office collected people who knew how to leave on exactly the right line. The 13th Monday she came and we had tea again, and the 14th, and the 15th. Each Monday the same. She would buy her ticket first, always first, fold it, pocket, then tea. We talked about many things, the station, books. She read constantly, always had a book in her bag. The town she lived in, not far from here, 20 minutes on the bus. Her garden. She was particular about her garden. She told me about a rose she had been trying to grow for 3 years, a particular variety, difficult, temperamental. She described its qualities with the kind of detailed fondness usually reserved for people. I told her about the light on platform 3 that maintenance had never fixed. She said, "Some things are better left slightly broken." I said, "I'm not sure the passengers on platform 3 would agree." She said, "Probably not, but you've kept it, haven't you?" I said, "I have." She said, "So you agree with me?" And I found that I did. She never told me about Whitmore. I never asked. We had built something in those Monday mornings, a careful thing, a thing that existed in the space between what was said and what wasn't, and I did not want to disturb it. I told myself that. I was not disturbing it. I was simply waiting. The way you wait in this job. The way you let things ripen. On the 19th Monday, she came in and she looked different. Not unwell, not upset, but something in her face was closer to the surface. The thing she usually kept at a careful distance was nearer today. I made the tea without saying anything. We sat. She looked at her cup. She said, "I had a dream last night." I said, "About what?" She said, "About a boy, a small boy, about 7 years old, building something on a beach, a sand castle, very serious about it, the way children are serious about things." She paused. She said, "He had his father's hands, even at 7. She said it the way you say something that has been true for so long it has become part of the furniture. His father's hands. I waited. She said, "I haven't seen him in 11 years. I said, "The boy." She said, "He's not a boy anymore. He's 43. He has children of his own now. I've never met them." She said that plainly, the way you say a fact. "I've never met them." I said, "What happened?" She was quiet for a long time, long enough that I thought she had decided not to answer. Then she said, the thing that always happens. We said things, true things, the worst kind. The kind that are true and unkind simultaneously. And then too much time passed, and the time became the thing, more than the words, just time, 11 years of it. I said, and Whitmore? She looked at me. She said, he lives in Whitmore, has done for 15 years, house near the sea. His wife's family is from there. I said nothing. She said, I looked it up on the internet, his address. It wasn't difficult. He's a teacher. His school has a website. There's a photograph. He looks... She stopped. She said, he looks well. He looks like himself. Which sounds like nothing, but if you haven't seen someone for 11 years, it is everything. I said, you've been buying the ticket every week. She said, yes. I said, and every week? She said, every week I get as far as here, and then I go home. I said, what stops you? She put a cup down. She looked at it. She said, I've thought about that quite a lot, obviously. I said, and? She said, at first I thought it was pride. I'm a proud woman. I know that about myself. I come from people who didn't ask for things, who didn't show up uninvited, who considered it a kind of dignity not to need. I said, but it isn't pride. She looked at me. She said, how did you know it isn't pride? I said, because you keep coming back. Proud people stop. You don't stop. She was quiet. Then she said, no, you're right. It isn't pride, or not only. She picked up her cup again. She said, the truth is, and I have only recently been able to say this even to myself, the truth is that I am afraid. I said, of what? She said, of arriving, of standing at his door and having him open it, and seeing in his face that he has made peace with my absence, that he has built a life, a complete life, that doesn't have a space in it, the shape of me. She set the cup down very carefully. She said, I am more afraid of disturbing his peace than I am of never seeing him again. I sat with that for a long time. She let me sit with it. She said, do you think that's cowardice? I said, I think it's the bravest thing I've heard in a long time. She looked at me. I said, because you're still coming. Every week. You haven't stopped. You're not making peace with your own absence, which means you haven't given up. You've just not yet found the way through the door. She was very still. Then she said, the way through the door. I said, there always is one. She said, how do you know? I said, 22 years. I have watched a great many people find their way through doors they thought were closed. She picked up her handbag. She smoothed her coat. She stood. She said, same time next week? And she left. I sat for a long time after. The two cups, the station below the window, the way through the door. I had said it with more confidence than I felt, but I believed it. I think I believed it. The 20th Monday, I waited for her at 9:15. She did not come. 9:20. 9:30. By 10 o'clock, I had told myself she was simply late. By 11, I had told myself she had a reason. By the afternoon, I had stopped telling myself things. The 21st Monday, she did not come either. I stood at the ticket window at 9:15. The pale spring light in the station, the quiet between the commuter rush and the late morning, her particular absence in it. The 22nd Monday, I put the kettle on at 9:10. By habit, I turned it off at 9:30. The 23rd Monday, I did not put the kettle on. I told myself this was sensible. The 24th Monday, a young man came to the station. He was perhaps 43. He had good hands. I noticed that immediately. Careful hands. The hands of someone who built things, or taught things, or both. He came to the ticket window. He said, "Excuse me, I wonder if you can help me. I'm looking for someone, an elderly woman. She may have come here regularly." He described her. The dark coat, the white hair, the small handbag. 9:15 on Mondays. With each detail, I felt something settle in my chest. The way things settle when you have been waiting for something and it finally arrives, even when it is not what you hoped for. I said, "Yes, I know her." He said, "She passed away 3 weeks ago, at home, quietly, the way she would have wanted, I think." I didn't say anything. He said, "I'm her son. My name is Daniel. We hadn't spoken, for some years. When we cleared her house, we found something, in her bedside drawer." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He brought out a small bundle, held together with a rubber band. He placed it on the counter between us. I looked at it. Folded train tickets, a stack of them, all folded once, carefully, the way she always folded them. He said, "They're all to Whitmore, where I live. 26 of them, every one dated a Monday, going back 6 months." He said it quietly, the way you say something you are still learning the shape of. He said, "Did she ever?" I said, "She came every Monday, without fail." He said, "But she never." I said, "She never boarded the train." He put both hands flat on the counter. He looked at the stack of tickets. He said, "I didn't know." I said, "I know." He said, "She never called. She never wrote. I thought she had—" He stopped. I said, "She hadn't." He looked at me. I said, "She talked to me, some Mondays, over tea." He said, "What did she say?" I thought about how to answer that, about the word resolved, about "I'm not in a hurry," about the rose she had been trying to grow for 3 years, about the way through the door, about "I am more afraid of disturbing his peace than I am of never seeing him again." I said, "She said you had your father's hands, even at 7. He was very still. I said, "She said you looked well, in the photograph, from the school website, that you looked like yourself, which she said sounds like nothing, but if you haven't seen someone for 11 years, is everything." He didn't speak for a long time. I said, "She was coming. Every week she came here intending to go. She bought the ticket. She carried it. Something stopped her at the door. Not indifference, not anger, not pride. She told me what it was." He said, "What was it?" I said, "She was afraid that you had made peace with her absence, that you had built something complete, and she didn't want to disturb it. She said, 'I am more afraid of disturbing his peace than I am of never seeing him again.'" He put his hand over his mouth. He stood like that for a moment. Then he said, "She was wrong." I said, "I know." He said, "I never made peace, not for a single day." I said, "I know." He said, "I should have called. I should have—" I said, "So should she." He looked at me. I said, "She knew that. She said that. She said we both said true things, the unkind kind." And then too much time passed, and the time became the thing. She knew her part in it. He picked up the stack of tickets. He held them. 26 Mondays.